excited to be here today. I've been watching this conference and talks from this conference for the past couple of years, and I feel like I've learned so much. I hope that this talk is a small way for me to give back to the community and be able to share a little bit about what I've learned about creating influence in my career. My name is Alia, and I am at Bloomberg running mobile QA. And I also have another unofficial role at Bloomberg. It is to be the chief of staff for London engineering. Our department is about 1,000 engineers and growing. And as you might imagine, it's actually really hard to run a department that size by yourself. And so in reality, there's actually several of us who help out. And we all do it without any sort of official title or mandate. I was thinking about this. It turns out in my career, for the most part, this has happened to me over and over. I've often found myself doing a job that I have no title for, and it's really hard to explain outside of the scope of the company. And it's also usually something I really enjoy, which got me thinking about why does this keep happening to me? And I think it happens to other people too. And I've come to believe that this is as a result of learning how to influence. Influence is such a loaded word in 2020. It often conjures images of TikTokers and YouTubers and celebrities, and it doesn't feel like something that fits our job. But I argue that it's actually vital to the work that we do every day as technology leaders. In fact, having the ability to influence is probably, at least for me, more important than several aspects of my role. It's the thing that allows us as leaders to work through dependencies and remove blockers and showcase our talents and really effectively get work done. And I know even personally, I've seen the ability to influence play a massive effect on my team. We've had a transition over the past year and a half from manual to automated testing. We were working with our engineering counterparts who were quite skeptical, actually. They'd done it, or at least they tried a couple of times before and failed, and they weren't too keen on trying again. And through our ability to win people over one by one, we were actually able to not only successfully transition a lot of our manual tests to automated tests, but we gained a bunch of supporters as well in the process. And I really think that this is due to our ability to influence. So what is influence? I think a lot of times when you think about influence, you think about this sort of stereotypical someone who's attractive and social and charming and charismatic. Maybe they're an extrovert. Maybe they are powerful. All of these words that kind of lead you to believe that you need to be someone like Michelle Obama in order to be able to be an influencer. And these characteristics feel like personality traits, right? Like you can't control them. They're just a natural part of who you are. And I'm not really sure that that's true. So throughout my career, I've observed several types of influence, and I've read books and blogs and talked to leaders. I'm trying to break down influence into something that we can relate to and really understand. And I've come up with a formula that works for me, and that's what I wanted to share with you today. And I think this formula is super tangible and practical, and you can treat it like a skill to learn. Because it is a skill, right? It's a skill like anything else that you do. And with more practice, you get better at it. So the thing about it being practical is also particularly important to me. In addition to working full-time at Bloomberg, I'm also a mom of 3 little boys. I have a dog and a cat and some fish and a partner, and my life is full, and I really don't have any time for anything other than practical. So you're gonna get my practical recommendations for building influence. So here's my formula. I believe that influence is a combination of, do you know who I am? Do I know what you need? And what value do I offer? And I think those 3 things together can create influence for you. And I think that's it. And you can break them all down, and we will. And you can see that they're like each of those elements are completely within your control. I'm going to share a couple of my favorite practical tips for each of those 3 things. And by the end of this talk, you'll have a checklist that you can use as a starting place to build influence too. All right, so goal number 1, do you know who I am? with this goal, we are trying to increase your exposure. And the big action here that I want you to take, that I think is important, is building and maintaining a network like it's your job, because it is a critical part of your job, no matter what level you're at in your career. So the more people that you know, the more successful you'll be in your career. And I'm not the only one who believes this. Harvey Coleman, in his book, Empowering Yourself in the Organizational Game Revealed, stated that in order to be successful in your career, to advance in your career, 60% of that success can be attributed to exposure versus that 10% to performance. And when I started to understand this, I thought this is crazy, right? Like, it's certainly backwards to the way that I was raised, that if you work hard, you'll be successful. And apparently, according to Harry and others, working hard only accounts for 10% of your advancement. And I think being good at your job is certainly a baseline expectation. So I'm not saying that you shouldn't go there. I'm just saying that if you want to grow in your career and level up, I think that you need to think of other things, and exposure is certainly the thing that you need to think about. And you can do that through building your network. So how do you build a network? All right, so traditional networking is awkward. At least it's awkward for me. You think about going to these work drink events, and you feel like this girl, right? Like, you're not sure why people are looking at you. Do you look weird? It's uncomfortable. And if you're an introvert, it's downright terrifying. And I don't think that building a network has to follow this particular stereotype, especially not in 2020, and especially not as we're all working from home. There are people that you need to interact with every day, right? There are people that you want to emulate. There's people whose job you might like to have one day. There are people who advise you. So I think that you can make a list of these people. Think about who impacts your career, right? And who are your advisors, who's doing your job. You make a list of the kind of people that you want to keep in touch with, and then you write a schedule for how often you should keep in touch with them. And this feels a bit like a plan, because it is. And I think you should approach it like a plan. It's going to change over time. Your list might not be, those categories in the left-hand side might not be the same as mine. Depends on what you want to get out of your career, what your personal goals are. But the idea is that you can make a plan and you can act on it. And the key takeaway as well here, in addition to making the plan, is that you don't want to wait until build that network when you need it. That lack of authenticity is going to come across pretty quickly. What you want to do is start building it now, and so it's ready for you when you need to engage with it for that next opportunity. So how are you going to connect with these people if we're not doing cocktail parties, and that's uncomfortable anyway? You've got to find a way to reach out, or have a reason to reach out. And so my tip here is to do 5-minute favors. So this is a concept talked about in Adam Grant's Give and Take. I believe it was originally coined by Adam Rifkin. And the idea is you should commit 5 minutes every day to doing something helpful for someone else. So I've thrown some examples of things that are helpful, but there's a long list of them, and I'm sure there's ones that are specific to you. But even just providing a little bit of feedback about a product that you used, introducing two people who might benefit from knowing each other, that's a favorite of mine, emailing compliments, and sharing your knowledge. There's loads of ways to share your knowledge. Really simple ones are using social media. It's especially easy when you're working from home. But the idea is to find these high value ways where you can add value to other people's lives at a fairly low cost to you. And we're just talking about 5 minutes every day. And I think this will help you grow your network. So goal number 2, what value do I offer? You have a lot to give, and sometimes trying to suss that out can be a little bit challenging. So your goal here is to make it clear what value you offer. It's simple as that. In addition to doing the work that you do every day, I think that there's a couple extra things that you can do. And those are promoting yourself through stories, or learning the art of self-promotion, and finding a sponsor. So on the topic of self-promotion, This is another one of those areas people often shy away from. Feels uncomfortable, right? A little bit like you're bragging, and that is definitely not interesting or appealing to most of us. But it turns out there's actually a really, really easy way to promote yourself, and that is through telling stories. And the really cool thing about telling stories is that it actually engages your brain. It engages the brain of the listener in a completely different way than just hearing facts. To the point where when the listener recalls the nature of your story later on, they actually feel the emotions again that they felt the first time they heard your story, which is incredibly cool. The other thing that's really interesting about this is that they can recall your story a lot better than they could if they just heard the facts. So here's an example. Remember I mentioned earlier that my team was transforming our manual test suite into automated tests. But I want to tell you the story in a different way. So I want to tell you about my teammate, Sarah. Sarah, after trying and failing a couple of times, came to me and said, I really have this idea. I think I can use Appium to make, to create an automated test framework. And I said, okay, that sounds interesting. What do you think? And she goes, well, let me try. And I said, okay, go for it. Yeah, it happened to be over the Christmas holidays. It was a perfect time to experiment. And she went away and she came back and she had created a really simple framework and automated a test. I was like, that's pretty cool. Let's see what else you can do. Can you do 5 more? And so Sarah went away and she did 5 more. She came back and said, okay, do 10 and then 20. And we got to be like a solid set of 20 tests. Said, okay, go run them 100 times. See if they're flaky over different network conditions. See what we have. And we did this. We kind of built it up, and we started to tell people about it. We got people excited a little bit at a time, and then we brought in another manager in the team to show them what we'd done, and kind of just like showed the test running or whatever. And they went, "Oh, it's really interesting," and we told them our story of how we got there, and how hard we'd worked, and that manager became one of our biggest supporters, and ended up telling our story to other people as well, and encouraged my team to keep going. It was such an empowering moment. So that's our story about automation. And so see what I did there? I got you involved in my story. I wanted you to feel the excitement of that transformation, but I also wanted you to know that we were successful without me ever having to use the word "we did it" or "I was successful," right? If you use stories about the processes of your wins or your successes, you're going to win hearts and minds. So my second recommendation in this part of the equation is to find a sponsor, not a mentor. I want you to find a sponsor, and you know the difference. You know it's a difference because a mentor is somebody who, while they're in the room with you, they're supporting you. They're giving you advice. They're suggesting things that you could do better. They're helping prompt questions you might want to ask. But a sponsor is different. The sponsor is actually advocating for you when you are not in the room. And they say things like, let me introduce you to somebody at our company or somebody outside of our company. I've recommended you to keynote this address. I've recommended you to lead this product. I have put you forward for a role. Those sponsors, they're critical to you growing your career. And they're often senior leaders in your organization or senior leaders in your community. They're people who have some influence and power at whatever organization they're at. And the key point of this relationship, which I think is a bit different than a mentoring relationship, is that you really need to do 90% of that work to keep that going. So that means that you come to them, you tell them your stories, you share your goals with them, so they have all of the data that they need when they're in that meeting ready to recommend you. And lastly, the final element to my influence formula is, do I know what you need? And your goal in the do I know what you need category is to really start to understand the people that you're interacting with, those people that you're trying to influence. And your actions here seem really deceptively simple, but I actually think these might be the most important of the deck, is to learn to actively listen and to build trust. Active listening is sort of my secret weapon. And I think the better you get at active listening, the better someone is able to hear you when it's that time to talk. And I'm talking about really listening. I'm talking about more than just staying quiet, waiting for your turn to talk. I'm talking about like internalizing what someone is saying, thinking about how it means for them, and not thinking about what you want to say in return. And it's honestly a skill that takes practice. And maybe you're far along on the skill, but I found it quite tiring when I was learning how to do this better. Because you really gotta focus on getting rid of the thoughts as they come into your head and focusing on the other person. What I think is really cool about this skill is that when someone feels heard, it activates, again, a part in the brain. It's the same area of the brain that gets activated when you're in love. That's how powerful this ability to listen and make someone feel heard is. And I continue to this day to practice it. In fact, so a friend of mine taught me this great trick to work on this skill, and it's a bit like meditation. Spend a couple of minutes when someone's speaking to you, and really focus on your thoughts as they come into your head, and recognize that you're going to have thoughts as someone is talking, and you just push them away. And continue to refocus, and reactions will come in, you push it away, more thoughts will come in, you push it away. You do this for a couple of minutes a day, and this is really going to build your listening skills. I will say, if you're going to do this, you might want to warn the other person, because this is not a typical thing that we do in our society, and it might feel a little bit weird. So you probably just want to give them a heads up that this is a skill that you're practicing. I think if you want to go deep on this topic, there's a great book called Time to Think by Nancy Klein that I recommend that you check out. And then lastly, on to trust. So building trust, critical in all aspects of your life, especially critical in your network. Once you have trust, you can have open communication. You can build your relationship for longevity. And because my talk is all about breaking down these sort of hard to quantify concepts, I wanted to share this equation that I came across a few years ago. I believe it was by Charles Green, who wrote 2 books, The Trusted Advisor and Trust-Based Selling. And he goes into detail in these books. But the formula is simple. It's this. It's in your numerator, you've got credibility, which is the things that you do, the words that you say. You have reliability, and this is the actions that you take over and over. These are the actions that you take. And then safety, which is also often referred to as intimacy. And this is the way that you make people feel, right? Can people believe what you're saying? Can they feel safe that you're going to hold their confidence? Do they feel like you're non-judgmental? So your top is really around like, do I believe that you are authentic in the things that you say that you're going to do? Are you reliable? Do you make me feel like I'm not being judged? What's the trick here with this equation, which I think is so interesting, is that the denominator, is one thing. It's only the perception of self-interest, which is crazy how much of an impact that has on trust. And if someone thinks that you are motivated for just yourself, they are very quickly going to not trust you. So I think if you're struggling with relationships and why you might not be connecting with someone, I'd suggest looking at this equation and sort of seeing like where might it break down, right? Is it the perception of self-interest? That's certainly the first place I'd look. But the other 3 are equal candidates for trying to figure out where that connection might not be happening. Yeah, so to wrap up, I've included all of my tips in a checklist. Feel free to take it, use it, adjust it, make it your own. Because I truly believe if you can master this influence formula by being visible, by sharing your value, by taking the time to learn what you need or what others need, you're well on your way to building influence. Thank you very much.